Well, hello and welcome to another piece of the Out Leadership US Summit. I'm Todd Sears. I'm the founder and CEO of Out Leadership, and I hope you've been enjoying the content thus far for this year's 2020 Out Leadership US Summit. I'm excited to kick off today's session, which is focusing on the challenges that LGBTQ founders face in the marketplace and what companies and leaders can do to support them. As an LGBTQ founder myself of Out Leadership, which is a B Corp as a business, I'm acutely aware of the challenges that I faced 10 years ago. And what I'm excited about is that so many of those changes and those challenges have really passed away and have been really much more integrated thanks to so much of the support of businesses like Mastercard. And Mastercard and an organization that is a startup named Brex are going to be discussing those challenges and what they're doing. Before I turn it over to our co-moderators, I do want to thank Mastercard and all of the support that they have given Out Leadership for so many years. Ajay Banga, their CEO, and Abby Fiorella have been tremendous supporters, as well as the entire Mastercard team. I was very proud that we were able to be supportive of their True Name initiative with World Pride this last year, where they allowed trans and gender nonconforming people to choose the name that appears on their MasterCard, which of course has changed the industry. And we're hearing more this next month from other financial institutions that are going to be expanding that True Name platform. And I'm so proud of that, because I think that is a great example of how an organization can take what's core to their business and use it to drive change. So I want to thank Mastercard for all of their support. And I want to turn it over now to our co-moderators, Ginger Siegel, who is the North American Small Business Lead for Mastercard, and Matt Belitsky, who is the Vice President for Sales of Operations at Brex. Thank you both for your leadership, for joining us today, and I'm excited to hear this fantastic conversation. Over to you.
Hi, I'm Matt Belitsky from Brex, representing Brex Lgbt, and today we're here to talk with LGBT founders. At Brex, growing companies need to move fast, but traditional banks make it hard to move money the way you want, when you want. So with cash management and corporate cards in a single account, Brex makes it easy to spend and save money so you can scale your business faster. And with that being said, one of the things we are on the forefront of knowing is what founders are challenged by. And being the leader of the Brex LGBT employee resource group, we're even more interested in understanding the LGBT experience. And so today I'm joined with Ginger Siegel from Mastercard and a panel of distinguished guests to learn about their experiences in the United States. So with that, I'd like to kick it over to Ginger and she can introduce herself.
Great. Thanks, Matt. And I want to thank Brex and Out Leadership for this amazing opportunity. We know that particularly now during COVID, things have been very rough for small business owners, but Mastercard in particular is very committed to helping LGBT founders succeed. And a couple examples of those, we have really fantastic partnerships with organizations like Hello Alice, which is actually a tech platform for what they call the new majority, which includes Black founders, Hispanic, female, and LGBT is a very big segment for them. I'm also really excited to talk quickly about True Name, which is another really phenomenal program. And for many in the LGBTQ community, the name on their credit, debit, or prepaid card does not really reflect their identity. And so for the transgender and non-binary community, the card in their pocket can really serve as a source of sensitivity. So we're very excited that we've made a strong commitment to address this challenge by introducing the True Name feature, really working with partners to allow for chosen names to appear on the front of cards. So those are just two really important initiatives, and we're thrilled to partner today with Brex on this. Great.
Great. Yeah, let's jump in. Ginger, can you please introduce us to the panel?
Yes, I am very honored because we have a tremendously esteemed panel today. And I think that you will all be just enamored, as I have been, with the great things they have to say. But first of all, I want to introduce Chadi Chakutahi, who is the founder of Staffing Proxy. Prior to founding the company, she had corporate roles, and she's going to really share her story about adding Q to LGBT when she was a leader of the ERG at Sprint. She started her company as a staffing HR firm to advocate for underrepresented minorities. And she's really made a pact to hire only underrepresented minorities for her own team while ensuring that she puts the best quality to her clients. She's been in business for a few years, specializing in hearing healthcare based in Minneapolis, and you'll hear from her a bit later. Next, Russell Silver Fagan, who is the founder of Clean Wraps. Before Russell founded the company, he actually worked at a law firm, and he has extensive knowledge of how to incorporate a company and how to prepare contracts and review financials. And the company was really founded based on a patent and really began to scale before COVID. Now the business is growing even faster. And what Clean Wraps is a sanitary hand grip designed to reduce hand exposure. So you can use it on subway poles, grocery stores, etc. And how amazingly timely it is. And he is a co-founder as a family member. So he'll also be talking more about his company. Damien Pelliccione, really excited about Revry. His background experiences in TV and news media and business development. Damien is the CEO and co-founder at Revry, which is the world's first LGBTQ global content streaming network. And he's going to be sharing the story a little bit later about subscribers in India and Saudi Arabia. So really excited to hear from Damien. Susu Wong, phenomenal founder of Tomo 360. She founded the business 9 years ago, a small marketing agency that actually expands businesses and not-for-profits, very critical, especially now during COVID. She's certified by the state of Massachusetts as a woman, minority, and LGBT enterprise. They really value diversity, and they have taken a special interest in those businesses. So fantastic, Susu, glad to have you here. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Max Major from Argo Collective. In 2017, Max founded Argo Collective, and really through the pandemic, he's really pivoted from diversity programs for execs to partnering directly with teams, from hot topic and fake corporate initiatives to making a meaningful impact of change and really aligning with trans diverse teams. So I think it's fantastic what Max is doing when diversity is the goal. You really need to ensure inclusion is the baseline first. So now what I'm going to do is turn it back over to Matt. Want to welcome all of our panelists today. Amazing work that you all are doing, and really excited to do a double click on everything today.
Yeah, looking forward to talking with all of you. Thank you all for being here. Today we're going to split up our conversation into 3 groups. The first is going to be focused on location and talent. Some of the themes around that are, where did you found your organization? Was it because it's a LGBT friendly environment? Did you move because of that? Also, when you're attracting talent, how do you do it from an LGBT lens? Obviously, we want to support and hire LGBT talent, but how do we do that? What are the steps to go about doing that successfully? Then separately, we're going to talk about raising capital. So some of the founders here have had pitfalls and also success in raising capital. And so speaking to founders or founders to be out there, we wanted to make sure that they could share their story with you as a form of inspiration, and also provide some tips and tricks. And then if we have some time at the end, we're going to pivot into a 2021 outlook and talk about what's possible. But let's jump right into the conversation. And first, we're going to start with location and talent. So with that, we're going to have a discussion right now, I would say maybe for 10-ish, 15 minutes, with Shadi, Russell, and with Damien, with Shadi, Max, and Susu. And we're going to jump right in. Hey, we're live on Zoom. So there you go. All right. The first question I have is about location. So my question is, did you start your company in a familiar location because it was LGBT friendly? So first we're going to go to Shadi.
Yeah, so when I started my business, I did look at and I did consider other locations across the country, but I live in Twin Cities in Minneapolis, and it is a very diverse and LGBTQ friendly city. So I settled on staying here and having my staff being remote employees, and just growing and essentially spreading the message and being a fair and LGBTQ friendly employer. So I stayed here in addition to the fact that Twin Cities, it just happens to be a very, there are lots of hearing healthcare manufacturers that are based in Twin Cities. So there are lots of hearing aid providers in Twin Cities. So I decided to stay here, and just instead of going to another place that is very LGBTQ friendly, spread the message and spread the love. So
that's great. I'm going to ask the same question to Max. Max, so again, where are you based, and can you tell us about the LGBT experience where you are and how it's impacted your life?
Yes, so I'm Max Major. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm very happy to be with all of you today. So I grew up in France, and I moved to the US 9 years ago, roughly. And the particularity about me is I came out as a trans masculine person just 3 years ago. And I really think the fact that I was living in Brooklyn at the time is part of how I felt the confidence and the representation around me, because there's a huge queer representation in New York and in Brooklyn. That's how I came to the conclusion of myself, finding my own self through representation around me, and also more and more TV shows where showing trans actors playing trans characters, which is how I realized that, oh, what I feel inside is actually real, and there's actually a name for that. And being in Brooklyn really helped my own transition as a trans person, and finding a support, chosen family, which and I'm not convinced that I would have that support if I was still in France. So this is why I stayed in Brooklyn and continued my company as a design strategist, and started a new company here in Brooklyn. That's where I met my co-founder, who is also a trans non-binary person. So yeah, I really think the location was a big part of where it drove me.
That's great. And then we're going to pass over to Susu.
Hi, thank you for having me here. I always like Boston, and my partner and I have lived here for many years. Massachusetts was actually one of the first states that recognized LGBT business enterprise in its diversity supplier program. So after I got certified as a minority women business enterprise, I also got certified as the LGBT business enterprise. Massachusetts has also got 40 companies that are recognized by HRC as the top LGBT inequality. So I think the environment here is very good. I like it. It's small. You don't have to drive 3 hours to go to another city. So it's I think it's very good environment for LGBT business enterprise.
That's great. So Susie, I'd like to stay on you for a second. You mentioned the Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce and some other accreditations. Can you tell us, how did you leverage or build your network when you first started or founded your company?
Yeah, I think a lot of them is through referral. I mean, you know, online marketing agency is very competitive in this space. You really need to have you know, your friends, family, and everybody to support you. So a few years ago, a few of us decided to put together a chamber of commerce. You know, one of the ones that kind of help it to start, and it really creates an environment for the community to thrive. The chamber has job fairs. In fact, we had the first trans job fair last year, and the experience for them was great. It gives an opportunity for companies to access to LGBTQ talents that otherwise they wouldn't have, because they were self-identify as LGBTQ. And so it gives them, the opportunity for both employees and the companies.
That's interesting. And so when you say career fairs and also the mentorship mentee programs, are these now virtual from COVID?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I'm in the mentoring program by the NGLCC. So, it's good. We have people, businesses that really wants us to succeed. And it's a good support environment.
That's great. Okay, great. We're going to go back to Shadi. So same question. How did you leverage or build your network when starting your company?
Yeah, so when it comes to, the business that I'm in, it has a lot to do with networking, of course. And there are two different types of networking. One is the client, the candidate portion, people that are going to apply for the positions that we are hiring and recruiting for. And then also the clients that are the private practices, the small businesses that we're recruiting for. And then when it comes to being promoting equality and driving the message, we take a different approach, because small business owners, unlike the large corporations, they really, from my point of view, they're at a disadvantage, because they don't have the corporate equality index and all of those things to show to an applicant that, hey, I am a fair employer, you should apply and work with me. So one of the things that we started working early on was to create a scorecard and show that this employer is an employer of choice. And here are the 10 metrics that this employer is working on to attract and retain LGBTQ candidates and employees. And so that was the approach that we took, and started working with our clients to help them understand why it is important to broaden their spectrum and recruit and hire more diverse candidates and talents. And when it comes to recruiting and finding talent for both our own organization and for our clients, we've been really working and focusing on how to apply and use unbiased recruiting methods, and use different tools, assessment tools that take that judgment out of our way. And so that's what we've been doing, and it has been successful so far. And it's just, when it comes to our client, it's just a continuous work to help them understand why it is important to bring diverse talent to their business. And it also helps growing their business. It's not just about their immediate employee environment. It helps with their business and their bottom line. There is such a large customer and patient database when it comes to healthcare segment, that they care going to a small business that has LGBTQ employees and cares about providing that cares about supporting the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, that's great. So we're gonna, Max, same question to you, but I'm gonna change it around a little bit. So I'm curious to know how you leverage your network when you started your company. I know that you have a co-founder, and I was hoping you could talk about that. But also, I'm also interested in kind of the themes that Shadi started to share about. How do you hire underrepresented groups, and what are some sources that you found are useful?
Yes. So I can start with that first. I've been, so I'm a contractor, I'm a freelancer as a design strategist. That's part of the work I do, and I join teams. And I was already doing that before 2020, of being more like, I am openly queer and trans, and that has to be a value for your team. Like, I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to pretend I'm not who I am. And I was doing that being slightly uncomfortable and really scared that I was going to have a lot of doors closed on me by doing that move. But when 2020 started and all the inequalities and the active racism that we see in our country, here in the US at least, and the how like for me, there was like a push of like, oh, I have to do that even harder because I am white. So I have the privilege of being able to at least not have that being an oppression towards me. So I'm like, I felt like I had that responsibility of not bending over and really like being strong into I am trans and I'm queer. And if you don't want to work with me and if it's something that makes you uncomfortable when we talk, fine, that's good. I don't want to work with you. So it took me like a lot of courage really to like continue to keep that, especially in the past 7 months with the crisis here with COVID. It was very hard to find new contracts, both in the design strategy world and on the diversity inclusion training and workshops I do around gender and transgender inclusion. Everyone's budget was just like stopped. Nothing was moving. So even in that, I was like, I have to be strong with my value. My values. I have to be strong with my identity. If me, where I am now, I accept to be not respected for who I am and not be seen for who I am, I would feel like very like I want 2021 to be more of that. And if I don't do it myself, I wouldn't feel like true to myself. So the way I do is really just that's what's on my website, that's what's on my LinkedIn. Like I am trans, I'm very proud of being trans, I'm very proud of not accepting the status quo of what's happening now. And I see that in big corporation where they want to have more diversity and inclusion, to be seen as doing more diversity and inclusion. But when you are actually working with them behind doors, they have no budget to actually make any initiatives work. And that's why I'm very honored to be in that panel today, because I know MasterCard is actually doing things, actually doing impactful actions with the true name. It's a big deal in the trans community. That's something that has as big as MasterCard, and now banks are like literally like starting to use it and really have commercials about this is a feature. And I love that because in a capitalist world, that's how it's going to be spread. It's like now one bank has the true name feature, more banks going to like also like release it, and that's how impact and actual change around respecting trans people can happen. So to answer the question about where do I get and hire an underrepresented population, which that's what I use underrepresented and not underrepresented. Like we are represented in the sense where we exist, it's just we are not respected. I'm part of a lot of networks. Some of them are like, where are the Black designers, which is for me was also like it was an amazing conference highlighting Black designers and Black leaders, and the question is not where are they, it's like they are there, and it's just how can we shape companies and company culture where they actually feel welcomed, belonging, and they want to stay, because it's not about finding them, it's about having an environment where people feel that they can be their true self, can they be their authentic self. Yeah.
So the groups are out there, the people are out there. We just have to get creative and clever into finding those pools of talent.
And have them trust us. That's the thing that I think is not part of the thinking. It's like, it's not just, oh, we need to send our job listing to one group and they're gonna come. If on your website, all the leaders, all the managers are like white people, and cisgender white people mean not trans, not queer, and I that's how I make my own decision when I'm gonna work with a team. If it's only cisgender white people, I'm not going to even apply, because I know they don't do enough work yet to reassure me that the company culture is going to be not only accept me as a trans person, but value me and really understand that what I bring into a team as a trans person is is priceless. And one quick example that I say is like I was born a girl, raised a woman, and I've been in the tech world for like 10 years as a woman before transitioning. So I know what it is to be a woman in tech. And when I started transitioning and I was more masculine presenting, the way I've been treated, the way people were listening to me, the way people didn't cut me off, the way I was invited to meetings where I was not invited before, just for the way I was looking more masculine, was mind-blowing for me. Like, because I had those assumptions when I was women presenting, and now I had a clarity fact. Oh, I'm the same person, I say the same thing, but I'm respected for being masculine presenting. So that's how I ended up building be the co-founder of Argo Collective and doing those trainings around transgender and gender inclusion. It's like I saw the light. Like what? That's not possible. That can't continue this way. So it's like it's really like creating an environment where people feel like they're going to be understood, valued, and that's not a lot of companies are doing that yet.
I think that's great. A great story. Obviously, you're being your true authentic self, bringing yourself here to work, to the world. I want to go to Suzu for a few minutes and dig into the Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce virtual job fair. That seems like a great place where there's a pool of capital in a virtual pandemic world to access talent. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah. So go back to 2018. That's when we started the Chamber of Commerce. And right off the bat, we have 20 big corporations that would partner with us and became sponsors. And then we also have about 40 business enterprises, right? You know, the small businesses that we group together. So right away, you have the community. And when we start getting the word out, we have the virtual, well, at the time it was job fairs, and it really opened up the people, who are looking for jobs, who are self-identify as LGBTQ, and for companies who are desperately looking for talent and they just didn't know where to find them. So the chamber provides the opportunity for them to do matchmaking. And that was just, I think that's one of the greatest things that we having the chamber that allows them to kind of grow. And now, as a matter of fact, we have another virtual job fair coming up in a couple of weeks. So, even though with COVID, we still can do it virtually. Things going to be a little bit different, but it's still opening up the, the job fair for everyone. I remember, with the trans fair, which was the first one last year, I think people were just so appreciative that, they were like, oh my goodness, there's actually a job fair for trans people to come out and talk to companies. And it's a great thing.
I think it's inspiring. So at Brex and being a part of the Brex LGBT community, we're always trying to find creative ways and clever ways to hire diverse talent. And in meeting with you all in preparation for today's event, you've actually inspired me. Max shared some amazing Slack groups that I hadn't thought of before. Suzu virtual job fair. Shadi had some great ideas. So I'm inspired looking into 2021 to try to apply those to our recruiting team and work with them. Listen, thank you so much for your great conversation today. I'm going to kick it over to Ginger, and we're going to talk about raising capital. Ginger, off to you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Matt. And wow, so inspiring. And, we're going to spend some time talking more in depth with Damien and Russell, but I do have to say that, Max, something you said, well, a lot of what you said, but when you talked about being your real self, I think when we think about raising capital, that's really critical when you present yourself to potential investors or even family and friends, in terms of, you know, being able to be your authentic self because you're the person running the company. So I just think that's really cool. And I just wanted to, you know, to add on to that. But before we dig in a little deeper, I just want to make sure that everyone who's listening today understands how critical raising capital and funding is, and especially during COVID. I've gotten some really interesting statistics from a study done during COVID from a great partner of ours that I mentioned, Hello Alice. And they did a study and also double clicked on LGBTQ businesses. And really interesting, they told us in terms of business challenges, this community, that the number one challenge they had today was raising capital and funding loans. About 35% of them said that. Second of all, this community told us that about 22% of them said growing their business was very difficult as well during this time. And then some of the other areas that they brought up were how to manage day-to-day operations. I think, you know, small businesses in general don't have chief marketing officers and chief risk officers, and they really lack a lot of resources. And then building awareness was a big one. How do we during COVID build awareness of our brand and what we're trying to do, and then actually acquire customers? So I did want to, you know, Matt, just do a little double click on some of that research. And then when we look overall at the small business community, we know that there is a big need to go digital. There's been about a 202% increase in e-commerce. And there's been a large percentage of small businesses that have been impacted if they did not have a digital storefront or a digital approach. So when I think about raising capital, it's not just raising capital from outside sources, but how can you grow your internal business so that your own capital keeps flowing in a better way? So with some of those stats as a backdrop, I wanted to talk a little bit about several different themes. And I wanted to start with the first one. I know Russell and Damien, both of you have had experience in this and view this as really critically important, but maybe let's start with Damien. On a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rank yourself on exhausting all options to raising capital, and why? Because we know there's a lot of different ways to do that.
5 would be we've exhausted everything. 1 is we haven't.
That's right.
Yeah, 5. Yeah, always, or at least you always feel like you're at a 5, and then you push yourself a little bit harder, and you realize, oh no, maybe I was actually at a 4 or 3.5. Look, you got to get creative. You know, whether it's a mortgage on your house, whether it's an SBA loan, whether it's grants, whether it's lines of credit, whether it's working with someone like Silicon Valley Bank, which has amazing programs for early stage companies, whether it's working with organizations like Start Out in Tech, Lesbians in Tech, to help matchmake and help you find that first check or angel investor. Start Out has a really robust program for this. You know, that you've really got to get creative. I mean, so much so that, like, you know, I still even do pitches I'm in Glendale, which is kind of a suburb of Los Angeles, and they have a really robust Glendale Tech Week. And I'm always a part of that, or pitching at their Thursdays Tech on Tap, because you never know who's going to be in the room, right? So you have to embrace the process of raising capital when you are a CEO. And that is just part of your identity now, and not just your job description. I always say it's almost like self-inflicting. You know, I'm constantly cutting myself with a razor, because you feel like it's such a soulless job to court capital and to figure out the ways in which to fund your business. But look, at the end of the day, if it's something that you're really passionate about, that you truly believe in, you always figure it out. And I think that has been the one thing that I can say between myself and my 4 equal co-founders. And I will take a moment to say that I'm co-founded by 2 women of color, Aaliyah J. Daniels, LaShawn McGee, and my partner of 13 years, Christopher Rodriguez. So we're 75% people of color founded, 50% women of color founded. And I don't know if it counts for anything. I always say I'm an immigrant from Canada who is voting for the first time in this year's election in 2018. And LaShawn also happens to be an Army veteran, right? And that is not forced. That was completely organic because Aaliyah and Chris went to law school together, and LaShawn and I had worked on multiple projects together. And we brought each other together in our living room, as every good startup kind of begins. That's your first office, is your living room or your kitchen table, and you expand from there. But the one thing I think, and also just to kind of backtrack a little bit about what everyone was talking about, is having diverse perspectives from not just leadership, because we believe that representation begins with leadership and ownership. That is the future of startup. That is the future of innovation. I believe that representation breeds innovation and breeds passion and creates mission and impact, and really is going to push not just ourselves as, let's just say, speaking from my perspective as Reverie, but it's going to push our community, that pink dollar, that pink economy, into viability, where you cannot deny that we're almost $1 trillion business in the United States. So is the Hispanic market. So is the African-American market. Those are 3 markets that have been extremely underserved, and I'm going to use Max's word, under-respected, because they have not been given the time of day, whether it's from leadership or ownership or even funding and capital, right? But now I think the world's waking up because there's so many statistics that show and prove, Forbes did a study, minority founders gross almost 80% higher margins than your average cisgender, straight, heteronormative white founder, right? And because of that, data will not lie. And I don't care who you are with capital, you still want your portfolio to grow. And so now it's undeniable. And things like Hello Alice and things like the Pride Fund, which just was born out of Loud Capital, and even things like the Gangels have started to realize, and that deal flow has really started to pick up because the mainstream institutional investors and angel groups are waking up and realizing, you know what, this is not just for the fact that I want to invest in a minority founder. It's a good business move.
Yeah, no, Damon, I think it's great. There was so much that you said, but a couple things I love is that you have looked at so many different ways to raise capital. And I think sometimes when, particularly new founders come into a market, they think about venture capital. I've got to get venture capital. And we know that, even, just looking at some of the new majorities, female business owners only get 2% of the venture funding. And if you look at female business owners of color, it's much worse. So I really like what you said about that. And I think you're right. You're always pitching, right? You're always pitching. So thank you for that. So Russell, kind of back to the same question, as you look at your company, and certainly, unfortunately or unfortunately, COVID has dealt some of us blows, but there's also opportunity here with what you're doing. But on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rank yourself in terms of exhausting all options to raise capital, and why do you feel that way?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think we're a little bit earlier on in our life cycle than Reverie is, and so I would comfortably give us a 3. I do think there's always more to be done, but I also know in this instance that we do have other avenues to sort of chart down. As a company that really was, founded behind a product that was invented back in 2014, but our website that you see today where people can purchase didn't go up until late March of this year. We see our impact in a lot of the getting the word out and the marketing that you were mentioning earlier on, and how that's become a lot more of a challenge as, out of home marketing starts to decline as less eyes are on things. So there's a metric on our Shopify store that shows us how we perform as compared to other brands that have been launched on their e-commerce platform in that same week. And we're in the top 5% of stores launched during that time, which I think is the most fun metric I've ever heard about our company. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've invested the small capital that we were able to raise in very targeted manners. I think that for people who are looking to raise money, you need to first look at the network that surrounds you. And not everyone is blessed with having people with high net worth as family members or even friends of family members, but classmates you went to school with, people that trust you, people that know your work ethic and how much you're willing to give yourself to that company is really all you need. As you and Damien were talking, you're always selling yourself, you're always selling your company, and people are investing in you as much as they're investing in your company. So we had the fortune of knowing someone that was able to contribute a significant amount for our angel raise, and we use that money really to just get the word out there immediately. And what that's allowed is a lot of people to then come and approach us for partnerships. So I think the most direct example of how we did that was investing in something that might not seem like a smart idea, advertisements on the subway when subway ridership was down less than 70% of what it used to be. It was actually at 30% when we launched. But what we were able to do with that was get very cheap prices for those advertisements and able to finely target people that were actually still outside, still touching things. As the city started to reopen more, people who work in organizations like Crunch Fitness were riding the subway, reached out to us about doing promotional partnerships. So getting the word out there in maybe an expensive way at the start can sort of help you make other things that would have been harder opportunities to grasp a lot smaller. So, I say I'm at a 3 because we've raised some money, but I'm now looking at non-traditional paths, non-venture paths for the future. There are a lot of great companies like Silicon Valley Bank and Clear Bank up in Canada that offer funding based on how you've been performing in revenue, and they're sort of taking a risk on you and then making royalties off of earnings above that, which is a great way to do it, and a great way for them to recognize companies that are performing but that just can't scale as quickly as they want to. In all of those instances, most of the time when you're interacting with someone, it's the first time you've spoken with them. Sometimes you've heard of their company, but they have no idea who you are. You don't really know what level of interest they have in what you're doing. And so something that I've done since I've been a lawyer at very large firms in the past, I've always put my preferred gender pronouns in my email signature. And I'm someone that is a cisgender gay white male. And I think that's important because the majority of people that I'm helping by doing that, it's not myself, it's other people to kind of question the notion that you are able to assume someone's pronouns because of how they look in a photograph or because of what their name is. And the idea is that it shouldn't be weird or jarring to see a pronoun in someone's email signature. So the more people that do it, the more that we're pushing that. I think it also allows me and my mother, who's also a gay founder, to push the just the ethos of our company right at the forefront. And in those sorts of conversations we have over email, we're able to understand and solidify that we are a company that's going to be very outwardly queer. It's not something that we're going to hide, and it's not something that we'll, shy away from because this is the first time we're chatting.
No, that's great. And just Russell, a couple things you said about going digital. We know that about 30% of all small businesses in the United States have pretty much no digital presence. And the 70% that do have a lot of opportunity to improve that. That's why at Mastercard, we built something called Digital Doors to help small businesses get online. But I think you saw that pretty quick, the power of that. And then also just want to commend you on your focus on looking to people that know you. I think that's really important. And in my discussions with some minority venture capital firms, that's what we hear, is that they want people who really have taken a look at their circle. So thanks for that. I think we might have time for one more question for this group, but Matt, you'll keep me honest here. But as you think about your capital strategy and how it's changed from the beginning to now, I think, Damien, you touched a little bit on that, but would love to hear more if there's any specific differences that you've really focused on.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. And I just want to touch on kind of what Russell was saying. So when you're looking at like Clear Bank or Silicon Valley Bank, that's called RBI or RBF investing, right? It's revenue-based funding or revenue-based investing. And when you have a clear product, right? Clear Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, and there's like a number of institutions now that will lend based on taking a percentage of your future capital and your profits and your margins. And that's great because it gives you the incentivization to actually go and market a little bit faster. And most of it is actually literally just for, you have to have your data points on your ability to be able to scale socially through Facebook, SEO, Instagram, the obvious marketing outlets that have metrics that have shown that kind of upward trajectory. Look, I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing is that, and I'll give you just an example, the profile of the most of our investors are actually cisgender, white, heteronormative people. And the reason why is because they're looking at us completely dispassionately. I use this term GAG, gays against gays. And a lot of it has to do with the psychological response that where a lot of older gay men, and I'm going to call it out right now, older white gay men that typically hold the majority of capital within the LGBTQ angel or venture space, they had to give up a lot to get to where they were. And so because of the stature or the capital that they hold, they're shutting the door to everybody else below them. And that's unfortunate. It's why a Black VC doesn't invest in a Black founder, why Hispanic VCs typically don't invest in Hispanic founders, right? So I have a better chance with straight investors than I do with LGBTQ investors. And that's unfortunate, right? But that's systemic because there's a psychological response to, if I had to get here, what I had to get here, you threaten my position of power. We do not want to do that, and we are not doing that at Reverie. I just want to make that completely clear. My mission is to open the door with and bring in as many people as possible. Reverie gives away our advertising to small businesses. So even though we do work with Lexus and we work with Gilead and we work with major macro Fortune 500 companies, we give away stuff to like the local gay bar in Austin, the LGBTQ Center in North Carolina, Identity Careers, which is an LGBTQ staffing company out of Seattle, right? Like really small companies that have no opportunity to create marketing or have budgets for themselves. So anyone who's watching, you can reach out to us at ads@reverie.tv, and we will give you a free 5-second community board ad for 90 days on our platform, 100% free. We'll even help you to create it, because the purpose of what we're doing is to create, obviously, a viability and a response and a platform that supports everybody from the little guy to the big person, right, who can afford to buy advertising like Lexus. And that is the entire purpose of what we've created with Reverie. And I'll give you a quick little story. I had the honor of speaking in Mumbai last year at the Kashish Film Festival. And we'll talk about just a second on how representation changed lives. Max mentioned this before about how they were allowed to actually see themselves reflected for the first time in media. We had a special called The Other Love Story, which was a Hindi and English love story out of Bangalore, kind of the first lesbian queer story. And it resonated so much so that when I went to Kashish and spoke at this LGBTQ film festival, I had queer women filmmakers hounding me. One of them shows me their Tinder and funnels for women who love women, because that's the terminology they use in that territory. And every single image on that grid was a picture from our original series, The Other Love Story. It's how they identify themselves in fear of being out and open in a territory that only had their Stonewall moment in 2018. You know, representation in media can and does save lives. And I will say that one last little thing, I'm going to give you a little plug and sell. Today, we announced the very first Women X Lesbian Queer live television network, OML on Reverie, which I put in the chat as our headline and deadline, and you'll see in BBC and Associated Press. It's the first ever queer female 24/7 broadcast network ever in the world. And this is the impact and the change that we all need to be doing as a community and supporting one another, that so we are not gags for the future, and bringing in more people like us to be part of this pink economy, to prove to the rest of the world that we are viable and we are here and we are worth a lot more than you thought.
No, Damon, I love that. And when you talked about giving away the advertising, MasterCard obviously has an enormous focus on financial inclusion. And we also believe that you can do well by doing good. And so I think that really fits along and why we're really all here today. So Russell, would just love to throw it back over to you before we send it back to Matt. And as you think about your capital raising strategy from inception to now, I know you gave yourself 3. You mentioned that you've got, a lot more to do, but just would love to get your perspective on any pivots that you've made, to do that.
Yeah, I think that initially, so after reaching out to my close network and my friends of family and friends of friends, it then became more of a cold outreach program, which is something that I think most people immediately think of when they're talking about raising capital or getting the word out. And something that's really helpful in that is looking at the affinity groups that exist on LinkedIn and exist on Facebook for LGBT business founders, and then more specifically for companies within your industry, because you can really find people that are interested in either consumer products, that are interested in PPE for our company. And it's a really niche or narrow topic. So doing that is a great way to find people that have some sort of common interest with you to initiate that conversation. And in doing so, there are a couple other, tips and tricks that I've learned from my time as a lawyer. And that's the fact that if these conversations are going to continue and develop to the point of giving money, to the point of doing some sort of revenue sharing model, that it's a serious partnership, and there would be some sort of legal document that would codify that arrangement. But there are other legal documents that can codify arrangements prior to you figuring out what the deals are going to be with that other party. And the most common one is a confidentiality agreement or a non-disclosure agreement. Our product is patented, so we're protected whether or not I have an NDA with you or I don't. But the fact of the matter is, getting someone to sign a document that says these conversations that we have are considered confidential information. The information that we're sharing is proprietary, other than sharing it with law enforcement or, all the other legalese and carve-outs that we have in there. You can't really talk about this with other people. And being able to send that to someone after you've had a quick chat on LinkedIn or a quick chat on Facebook and say, hey, I'd love to chat further with you over the phone. Do you mind signing a brief NDA just to make sure our communication is covered? That's really all you need to say. And these documents, they were easy for me to draft, but you guys can find them online anywhere, and you're really only changing a couple of words. And what that does is it's a signaler. If someone says, yeah, that's great, send it to me over DocuSign, they're serious about having this conversation with you, enough so that they're going to give you their email so they can input it, then they can sign themselves, and they're binding themselves to something. And that's important because we only have so much time, and it feels like as a founder, you're running down every path you can. You want to know when a path is a dead end.
Yeah, Russell, no, I think that's awesome. And you bring up a good point that many people start a business because of a passion. But, there are so many business things that have to be done. You in your background, certainly from the law firm that you worked in, being able to make sure that your business is safe and secure and buttoned up, those are really critical pieces. So before I turn it over to Matt, I just want to say to everyone out there in our audience and everyone on the phone that I wish everyone good luck getting through this COVID. But the one thing I would say, and I always like to end my discussions and webinars and media interviews with, this is not just about getting through COVID, but coming out on the other side strong. And I think you all have given some amazing information that can help people every day to do that. So stay safe. And Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, that's great. And with that in mind, took the words out of my mouth. I was hoping we could go around to each panelist, and you could look in the camera, look at the audience. Imagine that the audience is a founder or a founder-to-be, someone who had an idea, and maybe they started to raise capital, maybe they started to put together a website, and then the pandemic happened. And they're looking into 2021. There's a lot of uncertainty, but they are still passionate about their idea, and they need some words of encouragement or some advice. And so to keep this quick with time, I'm hoping you can come up with a sentence or two or something that's encouraging and inspirational, personal to you, and how you would motivate and help this person get to the next step, whatever that means. So I'd like to start with Damien, then go to Shadi, and then we'll keep it going. So Damien, why don't you kick us off?
In the words of Justice Ginsburg, speak your mind even if your voice shakes. This is the time to speak your mind. This is the time to thrive in a world of a down market and a pandemic, because small business has the biggest opportunity to thrive, way more than big business. So this is your opportunity. Seize it, take it, and go for it.
Fantastic. Shadi, then we'll go to Russell.
Stay true to who you are. If you have an idea, if you have something that you're passionate about, don't change it, and surround yourself with people that believe in who you are, and they're going to support you and network with them.
That's great. Russell, then we'll go to Susu.
I would say a lot of it is about faith in yourself. As someone who was laid off, that never saw myself in that position, having, a white collar job at a large law firm, these are one of the few moments in our lives where change is happening to everyone at the same time. And how you're able to handle that change and adapt yourself is critical to how you'll succeed, and believing in yourself from your other facets of whatever you were doing beforehand can push you through on this path too. So even though it's new and nerve-wracking, it doesn't necessarily mean that you won't succeed at it.
That's great. Susu?
I think don't give up, be persistent, be authentic, and really be passionate about what you do. I think if you like what you do, it's going to show up to people and they're going to want to support you. And I think the important part, the other part about business is that you really need to have a good digital marketing upfront, because now people don't come to your stores. You know, having that is going to help you to be successful and go viral maybe.
That's great. All right, and headed over to Max.
Yes, I'm gonna echo some of you all. For me, it's really about reclaiming our inner power, and I think this is a perfect time to do it. I agree with everyone who said that. And I'm actually writing a book that I called "Wake the Fuck Up," and it's a workbook to reclaim our inner power. It's 8 steps. So I started writing this like in June this year, of like all that bubble up of fire I was feeling through the murder of George Floyd, through COVID, everything. All that fire and anger I had inside made me stronger to like, I have to write about how I myself reached my inner power, and what are the steps that I took, and to inspire other people to do that. So yeah, my word is like inner power. And as LGBTQ people, we have that inner power that is here, and we need to pay attention to it and listen it stronger.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank Out Leadership for the opportunity to facilitate this session. Ginger, amazing to co-moderate with you, and of course our distinguished panelists. Really appreciate your honesty, your authenticity, and coming here today and sharing your stories. So with that, we're all set. Thank you again, and good luck. We're all in it together. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you so much.
Bye.